Hello and welcome to Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. My name is Ben, and with me as always is...
Jim.
And this is the most excited I'm going to be in this whole entire podcast, because we watched Torque.
We did.
Torque.
The classic from 2004.
How dare you sully the word classic? How dare you, sir?
Oh, look, Torque, it's... Even after the rewatch,
Sorry,
I'm
before we kick off properly, I've prepared a statement. I know this is highly unusual, but I think it's important that we get this out in the top. Then you can do your synopsis. I'll do my facts, and we'll get into the podcast.
Okay.
I recently watched a movie. That movie was called Torque. It is a cinematic catastrophe, so catastrophic that it makes a black hole look bright. Its plot is nonsensical. It feels like it was written by a kangaroo on a roller coaster ride. Watching it is like being trapped in a fever dream where the laws of physics, logic, and good taste have been thrown out the window. Thank you. This message is endorsed by Ben. Thank you very much.
Look, thank you for going to the effort of writing a scripted statement. Now, importantly, I don't necessarily disagree with any portion of your statement. Which might lead anyone with a brain to say, why on earth did you pick this movie, Jim? And we'll get there. We'll get into that. But before we do, let's do a synopsis of 2004's Torque, right?
Good luck.
So, look, I'm going to keep it super brief. I don't think there's not too much point dwelling on the nuances of the plot here. So, look, Torque is a high-octane film centered around motorcycle culture. The story follows biker Carrie Ford, who is framed for the murder of a gang leader's brother. On the run, Ford must evade both the law and rival gang members while trying to clear his name. And along the way, the movie delivers over-the-top action sequences and stunts which emphasize speed, revenge, and a rebellious spirit. It's directed by Joseph Kahn, and Torque is known for its fast-paced, adrenaline-fueled style, reminiscent of early 2000s action films. And look, I don't think anyone could disagree with that as a summary of the film. Now, well, look, we can add a few other things as well, but this is functionally what Torque is about. So why don't you hit us with the facts, because I'm sure that you and I have lots to say on the cinematic experience that is Torque.
Directed by, as you said, Joseph Kahn. His filmography includes Bodied, it's a rap battle comedy drama, and music videos for the songs Lonely No More by Rob Thomas and Toxic by Britney Spears. That should tell you everything you need to know about this movie. Screenplay by Matt Johnson. He doesn't have a Wikipedia page. Produced by Brad Luff and Neil H. Moritz. I actually bring this up because Neil H. Moritz also produces, do you know what he produces?
The Fast and the Furious series.
All of the Fast and the Furious movies.
As well as Triple X, Ben. Don't forget that.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I only bring it up because they deliberately reference the Fast and the Furious in this movie. Starring Martin Henderson as Ford, or better known as the dad from the movie The Ring. Ice Cube, doesn't need it better known as. Dude's Ice Cube. Monet Mazur, who plays Shane. Adam Scott, blew my mind. Also, the traitor, Matt Schultz. He's a traitor because he was in The Fast and the Furious. And then he did this. Jamie Presley, she plays the bad guy's girlfriend. And Jay Hernandez as biker friend number 2. Budget, $40 million. Box office, surprisingly here, $46.5 million. This movie, man. Yeah, look, I have a feeling I know why you wanted to watch this movie. It is bad in a way that is not unique, but puts it in a special category. It is written poorly. Scene geography makes you sick. Physics don't exist. The acting it has to be deliberate. It has to be deliberately this bad, because there are people in this movie who I've seen in things and they're not awful. Like, Ice Cube plays such a over-the-top gangster in this movie in a way that if it was in an SNL sketch, you'd be like, okay, nailed it. Nailed it. Wowza, this movie, man. This, well, Jim, you have to take over, man. Tell
No
me why we watched
problem.
this movie.
Okay, look, they're actually, first of all, let's get a few of the elephants in the room out of the way. Let's talk about the stuff
There are only
that,
elephants in this room.
let's talk about the stuff that is, difficult with Torque, right? So because I think obviously that's where you've started, and I think I should just sort of back that up and try and retain some credibility here because this was my pick. But look, Torque is a film that I would agree with you that the script is, shall we say, struggling a little bit to get itself sort of up to par. The geography is difficult in the action sequences. I can't deny that, and actually not just the action sequences, but also the dialogue sequences where people are just standing talking to each other. Sometimes geography just gets a little
There are
bit.
camera moves and static scenes that are very unnecessary.
Yes. So but and the other thing is as well, I will say, sort of on a slightly more serious note, this is not a movie that I look at or point to say I love the characters or I love the plot or I really enjoy the writing. This is the story, the characters, the plot, all of the stuff that typically goes into films that we enjoy. I can't see those elements coming together in a way that I like in this movie, shall we say. So then that sort of leaves you with, well, why on earth would you choose it? What is left there? And I would say the other thing about Torque, which actually is a little bit difficult to watch, particularly if you've seen it more than once, as I have, I promise you, is the film actually, it's got a bit of an undercurrent of being fairly mean-spirited. So when the characters are talking, whether it's male characters talking to female characters, or you could even say there's some ick here in terms of the way characters interact with one another. Like, we don't need to go too far into that, but it's got some undertones which are just not nice and not really things that you sort of want to dwell on. That's really, I can overlook all of the if you like, the other things we talked about. But honestly, that last part there, that's the part I just don't like about the movie.
It was an attempted edge to this
It
movie.
was an attempted edge. And if you get edge wrong, you just come off as mean-spirited, which unfortunately, on too many occasions in this movie, it does sort of tip over into that territory. So let's take all that and let's throw it into, a suitcase and lock it up somewhere, because then there's the rest of the stuff in the film. And this is the stuff which brings a smile to my face and that I just flat out enjoy. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about Joseph Kahn. Now, you were a bit derogatory, Ben, about Joseph Kahn, okay? And
dude is a Grammy Award winning music film director. He's obviously talented in that arena.
Just let me look. Joseph Kahn is not just a music video director. Joseph Kahn is the music video director. If you look at the past, I'm going to say 30 years of music videos.
He's worked with everyone.
Joseph Kahn is the guy, right? He's directed all of your favorite music videos from the last 30 years. He's number one on the list of people who artists want to direct their music video, and that's because he's really good at it. So he's not just a music video director, he's the music video director. If John Williams is the John Williams of, musical scores and he's the guy, Joseph Kahn is that for directing music videos. And once you know that, and once you look at his music videos and the creative camera work, Torque begins to make a little bit more sense, because at least in terms of why it looks the way it does. If you stop looking at it as a narrative film that goes for, 80 something minutes and it has a story and a plot, and you start looking at it as a series of about 3 minutes, each scene's 2 or 3 minutes long, and each scene is kind of a music video in and of itself, it becomes a whole lot more enjoyable. And there is so many just fun, silly, creative camera tricks and editing choices here that I love so much. And I feel like it's worth returning to the well every now and again to watch Torque just to enjoy some of this stuff. Are there any that, even on your watch that you just went through, Ben, stand out to you as things where you're like, that was cool? Now, forget words like motivated or, necessary to the scene. Let's just stick with cool. Were there any moment-to-moment shots where you just went, that made me smile, that was fun, that was cool? Or were you so angry by the rest of the cocktail here that you couldn't quite get there?
I really liked when Adam Scott's character forgot to pay for the petrol at the petrol station. That was funny. Not. No, okay. There is a couple of moments where I laughed because of the audacious stupidity of the moment.
And I'm grinning right now if you're listening to this in an audio format, because
So
I'm like, that's what I'm about.
In the finale, the bike fight between the two girls was mental.
Was
Not
fantastic.
only, yeah, that's what I mean. Like mental, as in like someone conceived of and committed that to film, and it's crazy to me. Like in this scene, they're using the brakes to stop, to flick their bikes around in unison, to basically have a sword fight with motorbikes. Product placement is too gentle a term for this film. In that scene, they just stand in front of billboards for Mountain Dew. They're not holding a Mountain Dew, just Pepsi and Mountain Dew billboards as they fight. The kind of jumping across happens multiple times in the film, but like basically trading bikes and like mid-fight is very crazy. Ice Cube no-handing at least 100 kilometers an hour while reading a map on a motorbike, also mental. And basically anything that is like someone's gone, wouldn't it be cool if we did this on a bike, is kind of the good bit of this movie. Good's a strong word. The interesting bit of this movie. Every other piece of interwoven piece of story and connective tissue is not great.
Yeah, but like if we look at it on that purely technical level, which is stuff I super enjoy, like the idea of that bike sword fight, I'm like, that's magical to me. Like the idea that we have two motorcycles and we're literally, as you say, we're jousting, we're sword fighting with them, underneath this overpass bridge. I'm like, yay, that's cool. It's silly and it's absurd, but it's an awful lot of fun. The ones that I love, there's one that just it stood out to me from the first time I ever saw the film, and it's just such a wacky shot. And it's actually an Adam Scott shot where he is about to start his car and actually then join the car chase. And they do this shot, which is as if it's from the perspective of the keyhole underneath, his dash. And he's got this, like, it's like the idea is it's like a massive wide angle lens looking up at him from the keyhole's perspective, and you watch the key slide in basically into the camera, and it looks like the way they've done it is they've given him an oversized key, put it into his hand, and then he's pushed it past the camera really fast. And if you slow it down or look at it in a still, it looks ridiculous, but in the moment it's just a super fun shot where it's like, hey, we're from the keyhole's perspective and we're actually watching that key come through, and I'm like, that's amazing, I love that. There's another one which kind of kills me where and this is one which is just, the first time I watched this movie, this scene upset me that I'm about to talk about. Like
this whole movie upset me.
It actually, yeah. So that reaction that you've got, that was me. But 20 years ago, Ben, I've had time to sit with it and then appreciate some of these things in a different way. But there's a sequence where, the two leads are having a quiet, intimate talk on a roundabout merry-go-round, like a children's merry-go-round. And for no real reason, the camera sometimes just cuts to an overhead shot and spins with the merry-go-round as they have what is supposed to be a quiet dialogue sequence. And it actually makes me smile every time I see it now, because I'm just like, that is just a wacky choice. Like, I don't know. What essentially, if the camera could be mounted to something in this movie, it is. People's kickstands as they're like pulling up on their bikes, the camera's
Oh,
mounted to the kickstand as it like comes down, and it's like a GoPro situation, pre-GoPro, where these kickstands are coming down on the bike. And why is the camera mounted to that? I don't know. Looks cool, looks silly, but and these are the sorts of things. Cube reading the map. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
The jousting motorcycle fight. The idea that we could, go up a ramp next to a moving train and land a motorcycle on the top and then have a car chase, not car chase. I shouldn't say car in this movie. That's a dirty word, but have a bike chase where half of it's on top of the train and the other half's in the train, and it's sort of zooming past all these people in the carriage. And I'm just like, this is wacky, absurd, and very fun. They move into a forest of palm trees at one point, and no, you can't tell who's going where or what's going on because it's not actually a chase. It's an action sequence that's kind of like a shootout, except they don't have there's a few guns here and there, but they don't really have guns. They're kind of using the bikes as the weapons, and they're shooting the bikes through the trees at people, and it's absurd and it's silly. And I look at it and I just go, I kind of love it.
I have been quoted in this podcast by saying making a movie is hard. Putting something on film in a way that it gets to be seen by others is not an easy feat. It takes hundreds of people doing their best. And, those hundreds of people don't set out to make a horrible movie. I was tested with that theory in this movie because this movie strikes, because I downplayed it. I do know the bit of the history of Joseph Kahn. I did read into him. I looked at all the work he's done. I remember some of those music videos, and I'm not a music video guy. I'm like, oh, that wasn't really cool looking. It feels like a nepotism movie. It feels like he called in a favor to be allowed to make a movie. And this is what we were given. And they're like, well, we made it. We got to put it out. Fast and the Furious is hot right now. We'll get some people to watch it. And that's all I could think in this movie is like, how did he make this movie? The puzzle to me wasn't like who watched it or why I watched it. I know who watched it. I'm friends with you. But like what puzzles me is who let them make this movie. Like, because this strikes me as like a director who wasn't told no at any.
Well, the trick here is you've sort of got to have a look at the climate, at the time. And you've also got to look at this idea that, directors will often start in commercials or in music videos, and then they'll transition through to film. And in some ways, I do feel sorry for Joseph Kahn in this, instance, even though he's had an incredibly successful career in the music video space. But this was his transition movie. And it was appropriate that if anyone was going to get a shot at a feature film coming from the music video world, it's gonna be Joseph Kahn, this director who is incredibly prolific in that other space. He'd more than earned his go, if you like, or his the idea that a studio might take a risk on him, but it is still a risk because it's the first time directorial debut. And because of what they were trying to do in terms of the energy, in terms of, they were going for fun and they were going for edgy, and because they were going for this over the top style, it seemed like a match made in heaven. And obviously those sort of fundamentals of script, of, likable characters, of, things perhaps not making sense geographically. And then honestly, I think the biggest issue with the movie is the thing that I talked about before, which is that it's got that undercurrent of being kind of mean-spirited, and the characters aren't very nice to each other in a lot of the different scenes. But because of all of that, we then don't succeed. And look, people don't give Joseph Kahn another shot for quite some time.
No.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like this
He's
in
got
terms
something
of
coming out next year, I think. That
yeah,
people
like
seem to like.
He continued to be very prolific in the music video
Yes.
space, but back over here on this features side, like this definitely hurt his career, which is never fun to actually see that the product that someone's put an awful lot of work into has had a negative impact on their ability to maybe do that again. But so but that said, I've had time with this movie. You've never seen it before, had you? So
I knew the meme. I knew like the joke that this movie was like a really bad Fast and the Furious movie, which is saying
yeah.
a lot, really, because Fast and the Furious, what Fast and the Furious does, and you've discussed it here, it hits a tone that this movie misses. It has other
Mm.
things, but the undercurrent tone, like people pick it on it all the time for Fast and Furious, family is everything. But that's why those movies work. The whole extended crew of characters in that movie are nice to each other. They playfully banter. They're not kind of that little mean undercurrent. And
Yeah.
and just building on that, I actually think there's a way you could have made this movie better. And I don't often say this. Give it another $100 million to make it. Give give some kind of bang behind the insanity. Make those moves Transformer-esque. Like, I know it's a different time, but like they do all these internal shots of the engines when they're kicking off. They look like muddy messes because it's not good CGI. It's not good computer graphics. Put more money into that. Make those moments for gearheads and for people who love that sort of action. Make those really, really pop, and the rest of the movie doesn't matter. It really doesn't.
Yeah,
Put
I think it comes back to those fundamentals, plot, character, story, and overall undercurrent of charisma rather than mean spiritedness. So all of those things, that we're sort of talking about there. Like the other thing is, this movie actually sets out in a lot of ways to make fun of the Fast and the Furious, which for when we think about that in modern terms, you think, oh, well, that's crazy. They're going after Fast and Furious. What an insanely successful series. It wasn't at the time
no.
that they made this movie. Like that series at this time was on its last legs. They'd literally had the first movie, which was successful,
Mm.
and then a sequel to it, which really people derided at the time and thought that the series was over. And then it had to
Easily the
get built.
best Fast and the Furious.
And then it had to get built back up slowly, but that didn't start till 2006, and this movie came out 2004, so they probably felt it was very safe to be picking on the Fast and Furious franchise. But you look down the road 20 years later and it has not aged well.
History is not kind.
The history was not kind to movies going after the old Fast and Furious series. So, but look, all of that stuff, I love the creativity on show here with regard to what's going on with the camera, what's going on with the kinetic action sequences. And the other thing is, it's amazing that when I first saw this film, because I did see it in 2004, it did make me angry at that time. I did not like the movie. For several years afterwards, I thought this is a mess. This is a waste of money. This is a waste of everybody's time. And over the years, as I've watched it a couple more times and I've enjoyed these particularly unique individual shots in particular, and overall come to appreciate Joseph Kahn more, my love I wouldn't say love for the movie. Let's not go too far, but I would say my feelings towards the film have actually softened in a way where I go, I actually think you can look through the bits that don't work and find some things to like here, And there's another sequence which I just absolutely love, which I call the which way sequence. Do you remember this? Ice Cube literally stops at the gas station, and him and his whole biker entourage, his gang, ask the two attendants, which way did they go, and they all hold their guns like it's a Daffy Duck cartoon or something in a giant circle around these two people. And then we have this sequence. It only lasts about 4 seconds, but it completely is removed from any sense of reality or the way that anything would actually work. We talked about Hitchcock's contra zooms in Jaws being used at one very pivotal moment in the movie and having a huge impact. Here, they're used just for fun at 4 or 5 different times, when people are on their motorcycles. But again, when we look at them, they look cool. They're done very well. It's an extreme version of a contra zoom or a dolly zoom, however you want to call it. So, I just think there's a lot to like here if you can look past a few of those what really are fundamental movie making mistakes here or
And look,
mishaps.
this podcast couldn't exist if you didn't do this to movies, Jim. If you didn't watch a movie, hate it with every fiber of your being, slowly fall in love with it over the next 20 years, we wouldn't have a podcast.
No.
And I do look at this movie and understand and know for a fact that there are those people out there who are like, this is my movie. This is mine. It's not yours. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to get it. This is my movie. This is my Fast and the Furious. There are definitely people who've attached to this movie in a way that people attach to, I don't know, The Room and things like that. Like, this is their bad movie. And I get it. It has that vibe. It has that vibe of, this is my bad movie. This is the movie I show people when I say you want to see a good bad movie. It could, because it does have a look, a prettiness. If you strip the dialogue out, strip the sound out of this movie, and just showed people clips, they'd be intrigued. They'd want to know more. They'd want to see more. They'd want to see the movie, and then they'd start watching the movie and go, "What have you done to me?" But like, it's that conundrum of a certain piece of cinema. Like, there are certain movies that just get in there, under your skin, under people's skin, and they stay there through a magical quality that is unexplainable. Because in all intents and purposes, they're not good. But this is in that category.
And it does, that idea that it gets under your skin. Like, when I say on that first viewing, way back in 2004, I didn't like the movie, I remembered the key shot from the ignition. I remembered it after that film. And in fact, that one shot was actually the reason why maybe, I don't know, 7 years later, I went, maybe I'll just watch that again. It had that one shot. I liked that shot. Maybe there was other stuff there. And then I watched it again and I was like, hang on. When Ice Cube asks them which way, they just completely break all sense of reality. And then I find myself, I'm just amazed. Now I'm like, hang on, and I'm finding these things. And then over time, you just go, there's a lot here that I just think is absurd, but in a really great kind of way, and in a way that I can kind of get on board with, So it's something it definitely grows on you over time. Now, that said, I wouldn't say I've seen this movie 20 times. Do you know what I mean? I'm not in that territory, Ben. I'm saying I've seen it a few times and I've remembered some things that I really enjoyed. It's also a time capsule. It's a time capsule now back to the early 2000s.
There are better time capsules.
Perhaps. But if you want to look at, we've talked a bit about Michael Bay on this podcast, for instance, right? And crazy. Michael Bay kind of pioneering what became a really common color palette in action cinema, which is called the orange and teal look, where they basically up the contrast, and you'll see it in each scene. The two primary colors are orange and teal, and it's in scene after scene after scene after scene, And in this movie, it's an orange and teal color palette. It reminds me of the early 2000s in a way that people aren't really doing that anymore in the same way, because that was locked to that period of time, and it's something which makes me smile when I see that color palette on screen, because I'm reminded of that moment in time when everyone was doing it, Now it's really just Michael Bay. He's still doing it. He enjoys that. He started it and he's going to finish with it.
I have one last thought on this film, and it's actually what kind of drives me the most insane about it. This movie acts as if it is a sequel to a movie we've already seen. The whole plot of this movie is basically about a revenge scheme about an event that happened before the movie, where he stole some bikes with drugs in it, hid them, fled to Thailand. Like, there's a whole movie they're talking about in this movie that they never show flashbacks of. They never show anything of. It's like, everything about this movie screams it's a sequel. Like, everything. But there is no movie before it. It's like this, even when he rocks up right at the start of the film, and his two mates, who the movie thinks we should know who they are, go, "Hey, you're back. Awesome. Yeah. Remember, we're the cool guys you used to hang out with." That's the vibe. But we don't know the cool guys he used to hang out with. We don't know Shane. We don't know these previous gangs that they just rock up as if we're meant to know history about them. This movie is like it's a fake sequel is all I kept screaming in my head the whole time. I'm like, I feel like this movie expects me to know things that I cannot know because I haven't seen the movie before it that doesn't exist.
Look, I hear what you're saying, Ben, and what you're really saying is that the plot of the film was just too difficult for you to grasp the first time, and I get it. I get it.
What I'm saying is this movie slipped from a dimension when it had a previous movie and fell into ours, and nobody questioned that some alternate dimension made this sequel and it ended up in our lap somehow.
Well, the other thing that I'm hearing from you is that I think you think Talk would really benefit from another film, a prequel perhaps, where we look at all of these events, and now we've got two, and not just
Here's
one.
my promise to the universe. If Talk gets a prequel, I will rent out a cinema and I will give free tickets to anybody who wants one, and we'll go and watch it ourselves. Because that's the only way this movie has been worth it.
Look, that sounds like a magical experience. I am going to start petitioning.
If you make a prequel to Talk, I'm going to be stoked.
Look, I think it's safe to say I've got a soft spot for this movie, even though it's got some substantial issues. And I'm really thrilled that you went on the journey with me. And look, the podcast is the only way I ever would have gotten you to go on this journey, right?
Absolutely. Well, look, to anyone who watched Talk or had seen Talk, thank you for putting up with that. It's now time for me to select my movie for the next podcast. Here's the deal. I said I'd picked a movie in advance, and I had, and I'm sticking to it. So from just outrageous motor sport action, and this is going to sound weird, to outrageous fascism, we're going Starship Troopers.
Oh, okay.
So we will watch the movie Starship Troopers in our next podcast. Any comments?
I didn't think you were going there next. I really didn't. I
love the movie Starship Troopers. I've grown with the movie Starship Troopers. I originally loved it because action, alien, bugs. And then I loved it because of the parody. And I love it now because it mirrors some crazy stuff in our world. But yeah, there's parts of this movie that I just really, really dig. And I wanted to watch it again. So that's why I picked it.
Well, fair enough. And look, it's definitely it's sort of a departure from Talk, but it's also of that time period, isn't it? Like, it's
very
only
much
a
of
few
that
years
time
before.
period.
So, look, I look forward to heading back to see the old Starship Troopers. It's been a while for me. So, but until that time, why don't you tell the good people where they can find our magical podcast?
You can find us on YouTube at Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts at Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. You can also find us on Instagram at Jim_and_Ben. We've started making some different moves in those spaces as well, playing around with some different things, some shorts and the like. We may continue that, we may not. We'll see, because we're human beings who live lives. But hey,
that was a great sales pitch. We might do something, but also we might not. So,
but if you see it and you like it, please comment, please tell us, please subscribe, please like on all the platforms. If you want us to watch a movie in any one of those platforms, comment on that movie, tell us what you want us to watch. But I have been Ben, you have been Jim, we've been on an adventure today. That's the only way I can put it that's positive. Thank you so much for watching with us.
Bye.